Hi, subscribe, like, and share. Thank you.
Okay, so napansin natin kanina na bawat method, laging nami-mention ang papaano mo pinili ang respondents. Papaano mo sinelect ang samples. Okay? Dito, hindi tayo basta, pag nagkakandak tayo ng research, hindi tayo basta-basta pumipili ng respondent natin na ayon lang sa kagustuhan natin. Dapat, kasi meron din tayong sampling technique na naayon sa gusto lang natin, but it also follows the standards of doing that. Hindi yung parang gusto lang natin, ikaw yung gusto ko, ito yan, without following some standards. So, in this portion, I will be presenting to you some different sampling techniques that might be used in developing your respective proposals or concept paper. Let me begin with this illustration. So you can see there are portion of people doon sa taas, ayan, that's the population, and kumuha lang tayo, okay, the blue arrow, from that population, kumuha lang tayo, and we were able to generate a smaller portion from that population, and that serves as the sample. And I mentioned this a while ago that ang pagkuha natin ng sample ay hindi basta-basta, dapat kinukonsider, that is why kailangan natin mag-follow ng mga correct procedure and standards para ma-make sure natin na tama yung samples na nakuha natin, yung sample na yan ay nagre-representa sa pangkalahatan. Kasi pag halimbawa, magiging bias tayo pag yung gusto lang natin na sample. So, hindi magiging kaaya-ayang result ng analysis natin kung ganun yung magiging approach natin. So, in other words, we have to follow certain procedures, correct procedures, techniques, and guidelines, standards in selecting sample. So before that, sampling is the process of selecting samples from a given population. So there are two types of sampling methods, namely non-probability sampling and the probability sampling. Under the probability sampling, we have simple random, we have stratified, we have systematic, and we have cluster. Under non-probability sampling, meron naman po tayong purposive, quota, convenience, and snowball. All of these sampling methods are has its own properties and applicabilities. So it's an advantage for us kung alam natin kailan gagamitin yung mga to. Okay? Kailan ba natin pwedeng gamitin si cluster? Ano ba yung mga instances na pwede natin gamitin si snowball? Yung parang gano'n. Yung quota, yung convenience. Bakit kailangan ko gumamit ng purposive? Diba? So dapat alam natin yung mga yun. So let us begin with the probability sampling. So the population element have probabilities or chances of being part of the sample. Ito yung basic principle sa probability sampling, that every element in the totality has the chance of being part of the sample. Okay? For example, dyan sa Rizal National Science High School in Binangonan, Rizal, halimbawa gusto kong aralin ang perception ng mga teachers towards online learning, flexible learning. So magkakandak ako ngayon ng survey, halimbawa. Tapos, ang idea dyan, lahat po kayong mga teachers dyan ay part ng magiging sample ko. So you are the population. Only nakukuha lang ako ng ilan. So dapat magre-represent yan. So yun yung idea ng probability sampling. Each individual in the universe is being given the chance of being part of the sample. Right? So let's just have simple random sampling. Are you familiar with this? Simple random sampling. So kailan ba natin ginagamit ang simple random sampling? Or ano ba itong simple random sampling? So dito, each member of the population has equal chance of being included in the sample, as mentioned earlier. Table of random numbers and calculators can be used to draw samples. Or you might initiate other means, like for example, using technology to make it more easier for you to do the sampling. Okay? So meron naman din mga available technology online that with respect to simple random sampling na pwede natin gamitin, okay, para mas madali natin siyang makuha yung sample natin. So for example, this one, as you can see this slide, we have here a table of random numbers. Okay, so for example, meron tayong population size na 100, and then we wish to get a sample of 8, okay, out of 100. So paano natin gagawin yan? How are we going to select 8 individuals from these 100 individuals? Okay, so the first thing to do is hindi ko nalagyan ng variable dito. Let the number of population be 1 to 100. Actually, that's the population na eh. Let capital N be the number of population from 1 to 100. So, bawat elemento sa set na yan, parang lalagyan lang natin siya ng numbers, numbering from 1 to 100. Okay? 1 to 100. And then, you may start at first row. Okay? It could be anywhere kasi random to eh. You could start first row, but you could start anywhere from that first row. by choosing the first row numbers between 1 and 100 until we reached our desired number class size na 8. Okay? So dito, Amy, wala kang sinusunod na sistema. Parang yung ano lang, kung dyan yung gusto mo, or you could come up with a randomizer. Meron din yan sa online. Tapos from there, na generate niya, yun na yung ano mo, yun ang magiging sample mo. Okay? So ganun lang kasimple pag ang ginagamit natin ay simple random. So the first element of our sample is person or object number 61. Then you could have 42, you have 04. Since 42 has been chosen, okay, 19, 86, 54, 60, and 05. So you could do as simple as that. Now the next one is, this is somehow related to the previous one, but this is more systematic. Ito, meron, random din siya, pero meron na siyang sinusunod na system. Okay? Hindi ka na lang basta kukuha ng certain sample anywhere. Dito, kukuha ka ng sample based on the established system. So, paano? Let K be capital N over N. Ano ba yung capital N? That's the population size. Okay? And then, ano ba yung small n na denominator natin? That is the sample size that we need. Okay? Capital N population, N is the desired sample size. Now, the systematic sampling, okay, selects every kth member of the population with the starting point determined at random. So, ibig sabihin, kung meron tayong 100, gaya kanina, meron tayong 100 na population. Tapos, gusto natin, maging 20 lang yung magiging part natin sa sample. Kasi we decided na 20 lang yung ano natin. Kasi para mas mabilis natin, kasi yung planning agency natin, for example lang to na mabilisan yung mabilisan yung result. So, kailangan natin ng madali ang proseso. Although, hindi naman ito nangyayari sa by example lang po. So, drawing 20 people from a population of 100 using systematic sampling. We can start by using the formula K equals the population size divided by the sample size. Okay, the sample size. So in other words, we have K is equal to 100 divided by 20. Okay, and that is 5. You have to take note that systematic sampling may be used if there is no frame or the population is large. Okay, basically, kung may background na tayo dito, no, pag large sample, dalawa lang yung una natin naiisip. It could be cluster or stratified. Pwede din natin magamit si systematic sampling basta medyo manageable ka ng konti. Okay? So for example, in a big subdivision, select every 10th house. Okay? So pwede yan. So nagamitan natin. Hindi naman natin alam, di ba? Halimbawa, ang subdivision malaki. So ngayon, gagamitan natin ng systematic sampling. So you will begin with a random house. Tapos from that, you will begin looking at into every 10th house. Di ba? Pinahirapan mo yung sarili mo. Hindi na ganun ka house to house. So gawin natin yan mga sir sa Christmas. Di ba po? So another is inside the mall or big store. Maybe you can select every 8 person that goes out or goes in the mall. So, random na siya, may quality siya ng random doon, pero may system ka na gagamitin. It could be large, halimbawa during Christmas, di ba? Naku po, dagsa ngayon ang kung wala lang COVID, dagsa ngayon ang Mall of Asia, sa dami ng tao, halimbawa nandun ka sa main door ng MOA, tapos gusto mong bawat pangwalong pumapasok ng MOA, tatanungin mo siya, ano ba yung sabon mo? Ano ba yung shampoo mo? So every 8 na papasok. So that's how systematic sampling nag-work. Another one, ma'am and sir, we have stratified sampling. This is another sampling method, under probability sampling. Here you have to draw back at sampling random, sorry po, medyo hindi ko na-ident, and systematic sampling. Okay? So, for example, kasi we'll have 4 representation. Instead, so kasi nga hindi mo masyadong ma-exhaust doon yung sample mo, dala ng malaki yung sample, tapos hindi siya represented for representation. So ang gagawin natin ngayon, mag-create tayo ng mga strata. Okay? Ano ba itong strata? Strata is a homogeneous collection or grouping of the population. Okay? Otherwise known as the increased precision. So, halimbawa, kung ang pinag-uusapan dito ay about regions or village. So, gamitan mo ng stratified sampling sa region na yan. So, from that region, mag-create tayo ng strata na municipality. Yan. So, from that municipality, mag-create tayo ng barangays. So, from that barangays, mag-create tayo ng mga cities. So, you are creating some strata. Now, there are 2 steps procedure in stratified sampling. Namely, you have the pairing population is divided in 2 mutually exclusive and collectively exhaustive group, or we call it strata. Pag sinabi natin mutually exclusive, meaning to say na they are not sharing common characteristics. One strata is different from the other. Okay? So, kaya sa tinawag ng mutually exclusive. The other procedure, it could be that a simple random sample or systematic sample is chosen from each stratum. So, in other words, yung pinakauna, create ka ng strata. From that strata, create ka ulit ng another subgroup which we call it strato. So, example, illustrate natin how stratified random sampling works. So, suppose this is our population. Okay, this is now our population as you can see here. Then, we want to come up with a sample. Although, andyan na naka-highlight na yung mga samples na kukunin natin. And you can notice, sa first row natin, dito sa loob ng shaded region, meron tayong isang respondent na kukunin from that. And then, meron din outside that, yung blue one. So, yung silang dalawa kasama natin sa magiging sample natin. Okay, so in general, as a result, we have now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So, we have now 8 sample size out of this population that we have here. So, that's how stratified sample in the picture, okay? Visualize natin. So this could be this could be strata. So from that, nag-create din tayo ng ito, shaded portion. So, and each stratum, kumuha tayo ng mga representatives, okay? Para ma-comprise natin itong 8 sample size natin. Now, so stratified sampling po, we have the so-called equal allocation and we also have proportional allocation. Ano ba ang kaibahan nilang dalawa? Pag equal allocation, regardless kung ilan ang number ng ilan ang total number of strata, basta equal number of samples ang kukunin natin bawat strata. So ang sample dito, mga mountains, ang sample natin ay sa isang school merong 200 students for example. Okay? So ang mga stratum natin, we have freshmen, sophomores, juniors, and seniors. So these are the stratums. Ngayon, ang freshmen may 175, sophomore and juniors merong 125, and then ang seniors naman merong 75. So because we're talking here about equal allocation, we will be, say for instance, ang gusto natin ay, sabihin natin, tig 50 na mga estudyante ang kukunin natin bawat stratum. So, in other words, sa freshmen na 175, kukuha tayo ng 50 dyan para mapasama sa 200 na sample size natin. Sorry, I was wrong kanina. I stand corrected. Kasi nakita ko, ang total natin, mga answers ay 500. That's the total population, 500. And our desired sample size is 200. Okay? So from that 200, alam naman natin na meron tayong apat na stratum. So you could just divide 200 by 4. And that gives us 50. Okay? Double check ko. So you have 200 divided by 50. Divided by 4. So that gives us 50. So kaya na-come up natin yung 50. Okay? So, nakuha natin yung 50 because from the desired number of sample size divided by the stratums that we have. So, you'll have 50, 50, 50, 50. So, a total of 200 students from the sample size, from the population size, 500. Now, what about proportional allocation? So, ano ba yung proportional allocation? So, this talks about proportion. Okay? Ilang porsyento ba ang pwede natin kunin considering the total number of population and the total number of population per stratum. Okay? Take a look at this Take a look at this table. So similar table lang to kanina. Ang gagawin lang natin ay ang 175 na, di ba sa stratum natin na freshmen, meron tayong total number of students na 175. Hindi ko lang sure bakit nakasulat itong percentage. Siguro clerical error lang to kasi number of students. So anyway, so sa freshmen, meron tayong 175. Okay? So sophomore, junior 125, and then senior 75. So again, the total population is 500. So ngayon, because we're talking here about proportional, still our sample size is 200. We are to decide ilan ba ang kukunin natin sa mga freshmen. Ilan ba ang dapat magre-representa sa mga second year, sa third year, and then sa fourth year. So para malaman natin yan, mga answer, i-divide natin yung sample, yung total number of stratum 1, which is freshmen, divided by the total population times 100. That's the proportion that we need to get from that stratum. So, ibig sabihin, if you have 175 divided by 500, it will give us 0.35. You multiply that by 100, it will give us 35. So, ibig sabihin, we will get 35 students na mga first year. Okay? Sorry, nag-shortcut ako. Sa porsyento ang pinag-usapan pala, percentage. So, ilang porsyento ba ang kukunin natin kay stratum 1, which is first year, 175. So, based on the computation, you will get 35% from the 175. Okay? So that it will give us the following values. Okay? So, 200, okay? So, 200 times 35%, 200 times 135. So, you will have 70. Okay? So, another, from that 200, the desired number of sample size that we are desiring, sophomore, so kukuha tayo ng 25% na sophomore. From that 125, it will represent 25% of the totality. Pero, meron tayong total na sample size na 200. Ngayon, ang tanong, ilan ba ang kukunin natin sa 200 na yan na nagre-represent na kay juniors? Okay? So, similar lang naman sila ni sophomore, pag nag-2 ng 2.5, it goes to show that 50 din yung kukunin natin sa third year. Now, sa fourth year naman, seniors, meron tayong population na 75, and based on the computed percentage, meron tayong 15% student from the totality, from the total population. However, from that 200 sample size, we will get 50% of the 200 para makuha natin ilan ba yung seniors na kukunin natin. Okay? So, that will be 200 times 0.15, it will give you 30. Or simply, kung alam natin yung, di ba, yung sa subtraction principle, add muna natin ito, pag subtract natin dun sa total, that will give you the remaining number. Anyway, so you have 70, 50, 50, 30. So you'll notice kanina sa previous table, kasi nga, equal proportions, equal allocation, regardless as to ilan yung total number, basta equal number of students ang kukunin natin na sample size, okay, bawat stratum. So dito sa proportional allocation, mapapansin natin na magkaibang values ng mga stratum natin based on the computation. So you have 70, 50, 50, 30, and it will total to 200 as the desired number of sample size for this particular example. Now, the last one, we have here cluster sampling. Okay, this is used when there is no population list. Meron siyang similarity dun sa previous stratified, kasi si stratified it also use large population. It will also use large population. However, ang pinagkaiba nilang dalawa, sa cluster kasi walang naka-specify na population list. Kung halimbawa, ito yung scenario. Halimbawa, pipili tayo ng sample size tapos hindi natin alam kung ilan ba yung walang population list. Pero alam natin malaking size yan. Malaking population. So, ibig sabihin, kung wala siyang population list, cluster agad yung isipin natin. Kasi nga, nag-qualify na siya doon sa requirement na characteristics using cluster sampling. Kasi, pag, halimbawa, malaking population, may specified na sizes, hindi stratified yung gagamitin natin. Okay, so, yun lang naman po yung iba nila. So, dito, you are to divide the population into 2 or more groups. And this group is called clusters. Kung sa stratified, ang tawag doon ay strata, dito ang tawag clusters. Now, from that, you select some clusters from among the clusters using simple random sampling technique. Enumerate all elements in the chosen cluster. So, para mas lalo natin maintindihan, let us have this example. So, the first example is, suppose we have Philippines. So, alam natin, naka-indicate lang dyan, Philippines. So, wala siyang total number of population list. So, automatically cluster sampling yung gagamitin natin. But this time, because walang pre-provide siyang, walang predetermined na characteristics or list or population list, pwede tayong gumawa ng clustering. Okay? So, ang Pilipinas, alam natin, ay binubuo ng mga iba't ibang rehiyon. So, at the moment, siguro, I don't know if tama ito, baka nagdagdagan na naman ng region. So, meron tayong 17 regions. Okay, based on the example na lang. I don't know the latest. So, yun. Sa inyo, sa Calabarzon region, so that's part of the 17 na yan. Now, randomly select 4 regions out of the 17 total regions. From there, all members, same municipality, of the selected regions become part of the sample. So that's how cluster sampling works. Parang lang siya, actually parang similar siya doon sa stratified. Mas lang sa stratified. Mas, kumbaga ikukumpara natin sa simple random at sa systematic, parang systematic dating A, stratified. But again, that's my personal observation. It might be the case that iba yung interpretation natin. So another example po, mga mamansers, halimbawa, hotels in Malate. Hindi siyempre, ang daming mga hotels in Malate, pero hindi natin alam kung ilan yung total. Basta alam natin marami. So in other words, kasi alam natin na marami, pwede natin gamitin clustering tayo kasi hindi naman natin alam kung anong total number of hotels doon, diba? Parang ganon. So suppose you will do like there are 20 hotels in Malate. Okay? From these hotels you are to cluster. We will select 3 hotels using simple random sampling and then select all, say, waitresses. So that's how the cluster sampling works. Now, dako naman po tayo sa non-probability sampling. Okay, so non-probability sampling po, ito yung parang although hindi naman pwede natin sabihin na pag ginamit ko sa mga bigating research, sa mga formal research, sa mga gano'n, mga technical, hindi siya pwede gamitin. May mga pagkakataon kasi na yung non-probability sampling, sila pa yung mas madaling gamitin, especially when we are conducting mga thesis of social research. Sa technical, hindi ko lang medyo kabisado sa technical na aspeto. Right, so some characteristics. Okay, dito, kung sa probability sampling, every member of the population has the chance to be selected as part of the sample. Sa non-probability naman po, not every member of the population has the chance of being included in the sample. So that yan na yung ibahan nilang dalawa. Another one, in general, using exploratory research and by qualitative researches, non-probability sampling is more often used. So, non-probability sampling does not make any claim to be representative of the population under study, and therefore, the generalizability of result is limited. Ang pinagkaiba lang po dito, when we use non-probability sampling, hindi po tayo makapag-generalize as to the result. Okay? Yun yung isa sa limitasyon niya. However, nakadepende din yan sa pacing or sa purpose ng study mo. Kasi minsan, kahit na non-probability sampling ginamit natin, pero maganda yung resulta ng ano natin, medyo relevant na rin niya. Yun lamang po, parang limited lang yung interpretability and generalizability ng ano natin, ng result when we use non-probability sampling. But again, hindi po ibig sabihin na less ang kanyang bearing when it comes to the result. Okay, ano pa rin yun? That's part of the analysis. So, non-probability sampling is useful when the researcher is seeking information in a new area and target subjects or cases to typify the issue to be studied. And that's usually biased. But we can minimize biases kasi nga non-probability sampling. Basically, sa first statement pa lamang po, ma'am and sir, hindi na lahat ng miyembro ng population ay nabibigyan ng pagkakataon. So, that portion pa lang, that idea pa lang, nagkakaroon na ng konting bias. Okay? So that's why include ko lang dito na it usually biased. But there are mechanisms in which we can minimize the biases, or if not, we can avoid biases, if not minimize. So for example po, we wish to examine the pressures facing careers of COVID-19 patients. So syempre, hindi lahat ng respondent makukuha mo. Kukunin mo lang yung mga taong nasa sitwasyon na yan. Another, because COVID-19 is relatively new disease, okay, little is known about the unique issues facing carriers. So to explore this new area of investigation, you select a small sample. Okay, for example, 10. So from that 10, you cannot generalize the result because 10 is relatively small. Okay. For example, kung ang pinag-uusapan dito thousands or hundreds, and then you have only 10 included in your sample, so you cannot generalize. You cannot say that this 10 is a representative of the totality. That's why you say it can be generalized. Hindi. So, yan lang yung ano natin. Pero, in my dissertation, I actually used non-probability sampling as a method of selecting my sample. But, depende yan kasi sabi ko nga, doon sa analysis, depende na din yan kasi may mga assumption din na kailangan natin i-consider para, di ba yung parametric, andun, magkakams na yun. Basta, ganun ka-komplikado po yung research. But, little by little, as kasi na-mention din ni Sir Robert kanina when we were conversing, really you are trying to come up with a research culture at Rizal National Science High School. So magandang ano po yan kasi isa yan sa goal ng DepEd, yung maging research schools, ang mga national high schools across the country. Okay, so yun, so this furthermore, this 10 cases will not be representative like I said. However, this sample will give insights into a previously unexplored area and will provide a qualitative researcher with a rich source of data. Yun naman din ang kinaganda niya. Okay? Yun ang kinaganda niya na konting sample lang, 10, okay, 10 is manageable in looking at, in finding some meaningful data, information, which are not explicitly explored previously. So, yun yung advantage din niya pag maliit lang yung sample size. Okay? So, again, depende din yan sa research question mo. So, ilan lamang po ito sa mga types of non-probability sampling na meron tayo, and these are common. And yung iba hindi ko na po nilagay kasi alam kong you have already this. So, what is convenient sampling? So, dito, subjects are selected because of their convenient accessibility and proximity to the researcher. For example, in my case, my dissertation was focused on students who are taking mathematics. So, biased na in terms of selecting the sample. Bakit? Kasi ang nabigyan ko lang ng opportunity to be part of my study ay yung mga math major lang. Paano yung mga science major, paano yung mga ibang mga estudyante taking other discipline. So, yun yung pinupunto doon na may bias siya. Okay, subject bias. It is used because of the convenience it offers to the researcher. Particularly sa akin, halimbawa kung meron tayong mga target, lalo-lalo na yung mga nagmamasters dyan, mga ma'am and sir, under scholarship program, PhD, di ba may mga timeline tayo, minsan nakaka-stress isipin na dapat sa ganitong target na dapat matapos yan, di ba siyempre nakaka-pressure din siya. So, pwede tayo maging creative in such a way na in accordance pa din sa sa for example, kung mahihirapan lang naman din ako gamitin using the probability sampling para makuha ko yung sample ko, hindi gamit lang ako ng mas komportable sa akin, mas convenient sa akin. Okay? So, some of the examples that we have, gathering of data through telephone, convenient yan. Convenient lang siya once may contact ka. Pero kung wala kang contact, hindi siya convenient. You have having volunteers to then to our research. Maybe you can have interview people inside supermarket or railway station. So those are some of the scenario in which you can have convenient sampling. Di ba yung mga reporters, lalo-lalo na may sunog, may sunog. So yung mga reporter, gumagamit sila ng convenient sampling para mag-interview. Then, ano ba nangyari na ano masasabi mo? Parang ganun. Hindi iniisip yan ng reporter na siya yung aanhin mo, siya yung kukunin mo. Basta, parang convenient lang sa'yo na siya yung anuhin mo kasi andyan na right away. Makukuha mo kung anong gusto mong data or anong gusto mong mangyari. Okay? So, another one is quota sampling. Okay, sa quota sampling, ito po yung method na kung saan ini-specify natin yung numbers. That's like, yung numbers na to, that's like, tinawag siyang quotas. A particular types of population units which are required in the final or realized sample. So, dito ang main consideration niya ay to complete the designated proportional part of the population. For example, you have 15 men and then 40 women from certain population. Okay, example, a quota sample designed for a survey of shoppers in a particular shopping center might specify that the sample include 50 white males and 150 white females. So, 25 non-white males and then 75 non-white females, but give no further instruction on how these quotas were to be filled. So, ang nagiging nature lang dito ay parang nag-ano lang tayo, nag-estimate lang tayo ilan pa yung need natin. So, mabawa, 300. So, kung sinabi natin ng 100, sige, kuha tayo ng 100. So, the quota is 100. Parang gano'n. So, parang hindi siya, again, bias na ulit siya. Pero, depende yan sa justification ninyo why you are using such non-probability sampling technique as part of your sample selection. Okay? So, that is why, kailangan mo talagang, doon sa methodology, when you are writing the methodology, kailangan mong i-specify, explain mo ng klarong-klaro yung bawat aspekto doon, bawat portion doon. Para pagdating ng mga defense, pagdating ng mga tanungan or research review sa school natin, wala na masyadong tanong kasi mas klarong-klaro na doon sa methodology. So another example for quota sampling, which can have a possible source of bias, given the scenario kanina, you could have bias in terms of types of shopper na pupunta sa loob ng mall. Siyempre, hindi ka mag-interview sa medyo masungit ang mukha. Di ba? Baka mamaya magalitan ka. Di ba? So yan, isa yan sa bias na mangyayari using the quota. Okay. Siyempre, baka mamaya hindi mo din pwedeng consider down active shoppers, harassed looking shoppers, impressive looking shoppers, okay, mothers with several small children. Mag-interview mo tatanong ka pa ba yung nanay halos doon, ay hirapan na siya magdala ng children niya, tapos magtatanong ka pa siyempre, maabala ka. Shoppers laden down with parcel. So yun ilan lamang yun sa mga possibilities na magkakaroon tayo ng bias in terms of using quota sampling. Another one, we have purposive sampling. So in here, the researcher is choosing the respondent on the basis of predefined criteria or purpose. Okay? So you lay down by that. So sa akin, mga maman sir, yung based sa experience ko, yun nga po, I use purposive sampling because I know that this group of individuals could give me the result or the data, the information that I need to answer the questions I considered in my study. So, hindi naman po ibig sabihin na pag non-probability sampling technique or method ang gamitin natin, hindi na maganda yung result. Hindi naman po gano'n nag-work ang interpretation or conclusion or result. Okay, nakadepende yan sa pag-conduct natin ng study. So we may have prior knowledge that indicates that a particular group is important to our study, or we select those subjects who feel are typical example of the issue we wish to study. Okay, so that's choosing a respondent purposely. So example, choosing respondents to study labor disputes. We select only those engaged in labor disputes. Which is tama naman. Kasi paano ka makakakuha ng data kung ang pipiliin mo yung walang mga cases, di ba? So pipiliin mo yung mga sample na mayroon kinalaman doon sa gusto mong aralin o gusto mong hanapan ng solusyon. And the last one, we have snowball sampling. Okay, itong snowball sampling ay ginagamit when we have no knowledge of the size of population and limitado lang po yung access natin sa subject. Okay, na pipili na natin gamitin as part of our sample and nag-meet siya sa criteria na in-establish natin. Okay, so halimbawa po, taking a sample of homeless people. Okay, the question now is, how are we going to do it? Okay, kukuha ka ng sample ng homeless people. Siyempre, mahirapan tayo yan. Kasi hindi naman lahat na, halimbawa, may mga ira na wala ka namang makikita. Maliban na lamang po sa Maynila, kasi sa Maynila, marami talaga mga informal settlers. So, hindi pupunta ka ng Maynila para makakuha ka ng desired sample. Pero, di ba, it costs money. Pag nagkakandak po tayo ng research, it should be economical. It doesn't have to be doing a research that needs malaking budget. Lalong-lalo na pag limited ang resources natin. So, yun. So, the question is, how are you going to do it? So, I listed some of these statements here that we could consider. So, we wish to serve the homeless street kids. That's one. No access to a convenient list of names from which to draw our sample. So, you can use snowball. Randomly select certain areas or clusters that are relevant to our research problem. So, because there are areas na alam mong wala talaga doon, hindi, huwag mo na isama sa sa area na pupuntahan kasi masasayang yung oras natin. Wala naman tayong data na makukuha doon. Diba? Parang gano'n. We might choose to serve kids in youth refuges or in both cities and rural. So, pwede din yun. Once our cluster or areas are identified, we then randomly choose our desired sample. So, parang datingin nyo, parang sa cluster, pero, naka-define din yung kanyang mechanism or strategies na gagawin. Pero, ang datingin niya parang sa non-probability, sa probability na cluster. Anyway, so much for that. Those are some of the sampling techniques that we can use. Again, I'd like to